and because they always say it, I say it as well. Thank God it's Friday. All right. And on the show today, one of the major things that topped the news, which is what we are looking at, would be the report that came in from Budget Foundation. All right. So Budget put out a report, states on states report. And this particular report got several people talking. It says Rivers State was tops, having comparatively limited dependence on federally distributed revenue for their operations, and so have a greater viability of existing without, theoretically speaking now, that federal allocation. It would still exist as an entity on its own. And it also gave kudos to the state for how it has been very what's the word? I'm trying to get the right word to phrase it properly. It also gave kudos to the state for how it's, handling spending and public revenue left to implement capital projects. And all of these things are, it says, are components of the budgets after fulfilling repayment obligations. So the bottom line is, according to Budget, there's something that Rivers State is doing well that would put it in a position where if it doesn't get, the usual monthly allocation, it wouldn't really matter. Lagos State also came second on that list, which is shocking because you would look at it and think that Lagos, most of the companies there, and in fact, if not all the companies there in Nigeria, if you don't go to Lagos right now, it feels as though you haven't gone anywhere. With all of those, you would think that, Lagos should be the one that would, be number one. Well, from Budget, Lagos is number 2. But that's not even my major focus. It then brings us to begin to ask this question, which is what the conversation is centered on. The idea of the federal monthly allocation. Are states becoming very docile or more and more docile because of this federal allocation idea? Is it beginning to make states, lose their potential more and more? Is it making state governments not really think out of the box and think deep and look at ways through which it can generate revenue and sustain itself without hoping to go and share monthly allocation at the end of every month? Is that, and I think that's what this report should help us begin to look at now. And to help understand that, I'll put out a few stats, a few things that I need us to look into. First off, in this country, the federal government receives 52.68% of total revenue. Now, many have questioned this because what does the federal government, that's the government at the center, what does it really do? All the states gather these revenues and then send to the center. The center receives 52.68%, which would mean that it should carry on more responsibility. But if you look at it as well, the federal government's responsibility, does it really equate to engaging the various states enough to cater for the development of the people and those states? When you structurally put it in place, does it really align? With 52.68% of revenue that it receives, you would think that, it means the federal government should be doing a lot. But then the bulk of everything still falls on the table of the state government. So now you understand why people are quick to point fingers at the federal government because of how much you are getting for doing little. The states receive 26.72%. Oh, yes. You don't even want to know what the local governments receive. It's not very much different from the states. Local governments receive 20.60%. So it's just about a 6-point-something% difference, right? Between states and local. That's how close what state governments receive and what local government receive. So close. So basically, what the federal government receives alone, divide it in twos. That's what you give to states and local government, and you still have change. That's what only the federal government receives. Now, if this is the case, you would then also want to question your local governments the same way you question your state government, but then would have to triple question the federal government because of the bulk of what it gets. And some say, well, the federal government is looking at the whole country. There's more that it has to do. But then the exclusive list also gives the federal government a lot more power. All right. If you have no idea, I would help you. On the exclusive legislative list, we have about over 30 items. Now, what this means for those that do not understand the idea, exclusive legislative list basically contains items reserved only for the federal government, while the concurrent legislative list contains both items that are both for the federal and state governments. Do you get the drift? So it's not like there's an exclusive list for state governments that the federal government cannot interfere with. There's also the residual legislative list. This one, there's no express, powers that contains. It's possibly they know how they handle it. But for the purposes of our conversation, I'll be focusing on those two. The exclusive list contains items reserved only for the government at the center, while the concurrent contains, items that are reserved for both the center and the state, which means the federal government still has a say in what the state will do. So it brings us to the argument that state governments have been having over the years that you need to really, if we are states, first of all, we're receiving like 26 point something % of the revenue, which would mean that we're not receiving as much as we should, even if we're generating most of the monies that come to the center. Then our powers are still brought down to a certain degree. There's the argument by governors. Some agree, some don't. But if you look at that exclusive list, it's a lot. And we can't go through all of them. I'll try to just point out the ones that I think will concern, our conversation. Commercial and industrial monopolies, combines, and trusts. It's in that list. Copyright is in that list. Control of capital issues is also in that list. Customs and excise duties is also on that list. There's also the export duties, external affairs, exchange control. And this one is interesting. Fishing and fisheries, other than fishing and fisheries in rivers, lakes, and waterways. So as long as your fishing is inland waters within Nigeria, it's in the exclusive list. So outside lakes and fishing in lakes and small rivers, that's okay. But outside that, so when we are looking at, I've always come at the state governments to question, like, why can't state governments even have like a big fishing company, collaboration between like the states in the riverine? We have the rivers, Bayelsa, Delta, to have this conversation, have a company like this. You could do this, something big. We're canning fish and selling fish in cans like we have with the popular brands that, people do these things. Deep sea fishing, put it that way. These things. Why can't we establish this? Well, negotiations can happen with the federal and we can see how that happens. But largely, that's in the exclusive list. Amongst many other things, labor, including trade unions, industrial relations, insurance. The list goes on and on and on. That's over 30 items. Now, if you go to the concurrent list, you have only 10 items. 10. Education, agriculture, tax, revenue collection, allocation, health, roads, economic and industrial development, division of public revenue, grants or loans, imposition of charges. But even with these items on the concurrent legislative list, have the state governments, this is where the next question now come in, have they exhausted them? Have they been able to really drain them? We used to have education tourism, health tourism. I don't want to mention agriculture because if you look at the states, I don't think there's any one state in the whole of this country that's doing fantastically well in agriculture, despite the huge resources available to them. There is no system, there is no structure. You cannot even say agricultural industry in the states because it has not been organized to that level where you look at it and really say this is an agricultural industry. Whereas we have what it takes to have achieved that. Take a look at River State. There's the fishing industry. There's plenty of other industries. So now, when you have agriculture as something on the concurrent list, how do you then put that side by side with fishing, perhaps they would have to sort that out. But my point is there more that states could be doing that they have not even thought of? State government, the people we elect as leaders, how are they thinking when they get in these positions? The people that are commissioners, because you've seen a commissioner, you're asking a commissioner for what is the plan in this your area. And I've read some, not just in Rivers State, even in Bayelsa State, where I'm from, in Delta State, where I grew up, partly from. You would see a commissioner saying they are waiting for the governor. You're in a situation where a commissioner cannot come up with a program or plan for a ministry. You need the governor to tell what to do. Like, it's just a lot of things that don't add up. Why haven't we harnessed enough these things that are on the concurrent list? I think power now, states are now being given that leverage to generate. How long? What are we doing with that? Ultimately, are states more docile because of federal allocation? After the commercial, there's more.
Nigeria Info.
My name is Ifeemi Andrew, and we would be going to the phone lines shortly. The fundamental question has been, do you think that state governments are becoming more and more docile because of the monthly allocation? It's now a thing where they just wait to go get it. Could you also look at the fact that the federal government is contributing to it? I mean, when you look at what's on the exclusive list and how much control and powers the federal government has, even on the concurrent list, the federal government still has a say in that. And then not to also mention the fact that the revenue that if we look at the percentage and say, let state governments, right, be giving less revenue to the center, like reduce the percentage of what you give to the center. Could that help states gather more money and do more at the state level? Looking at, well, the argument many make that, I mean, the development of the states, people will say largely falls on the laps of the governors of those states, but then look at how much they get, and they send most of those monies to the center. So if we look at trying to adjust the ratio of what you generate versus what you send to the center, could that also perhaps help the situation? Well, many questions around it, and we'll need to get your response to it. So let us know on Facebook at Nigeria Info 92.3 PH, on YouTube at Nigeria Info PH, on WhatsApp 0809 030 6416. On yes, that's on WhatsApp. You can call the phone lines 0817 923 0007. Again, 0817 923 0007. That is the number to call. I'll be taking some of your comments now. Godwin Agwanwo says, concerning this matter, is very good question. Yes, because of dependence on monthly allocation, why is the state is limited to some kind of development? Because when you generate your own allocation, because you are dependable on something or somebody, you can't get money from other areas. There are many other monies that come to the states from the federal government. So it's a two-way conversation. As much as you might say the federal government has like some role to play in all of this, don't forget that there's a lot of monies that the states also make, and there's a certain level of powers that the state governments also have. Now the big question is, have they even been able to exhaust all of those opportunities available to them now?